The USB stick fell out of Zoya's purse like a confession waiting to happen. I was sitting at our kitchen table, laptop open, reviewing security protocols for Monday's board meeting, when her designer bag tipped over. Lipstick, receipts, and that small silver drive scattered across the hardwood floor. She was in the shower, humming something I didn't recognize, probably the same tune she'd been humming for weeks. My name is Keaton, and I'm an IT security manager for Pinnacle Financial. 39 years old, decent salary, boring life. Or so I thought until that moment when I picked up the drive and noticed it wasn't one of mine. "Everything okay out there?" Zoya called from the bathroom. "Just cleaning up," I replied, turning the USB over in my palm. No label, no identifying marks. Standard corporate issue. I should have put it back. Should have minded my own business. But 3 months of late nights, mysterious phone calls, and my wife's sudden interest in working weekends had already planted seeds of suspicion. This little silver device was about to water them. I plugged it into my laptop. Hotel confirmations, dinner reservations for 2, and a folder labeled D containing email threads that made my stomach twist into knots. The messages were intimate, detailed, and definitely not work-related. My wife had been planning romantic getaways with someone named Darren Halloway. The shower stopped running, I ejected the drive, scattered everything back across the floor, and closed my laptop. When Zoya emerged in her terry-cloth robe, hair wrapped in a towel, I was pretending to read the morning news. "You're up early for a Saturday," she said, gathering her things. "Couldn't sleep." I watched her check the contents of her purse, saw the brief moment of panic when she couldn't immediately locate the USB. "Everything there?" "Yes, just looking for my lip balm." She found the drive, slipped it into the side pocket. "I'm meeting Tamsin for brunch. Girl talk, you know how it is." I knew exactly how it was. Tamsin had been Zoya's best friend since college, her partner in gossip and weekend adventures. What I hadn't realized was how those adventures had evolved. "Tell her I said hello," I managed. After she left, I sat in our empty apartment and processed what I'd learned. Darren Halloway wasn't just a name in my wife's phone. He was a partner at Morrison, Keller and Associates, one of the city's most prestigious law firms. Married, according to the firm's website. His bio mentioned his wife Ilara, an event planner who organized charity galas for the social elite. I spent the weekend digging deeper. My security clearance and IT background made research easier than it should have been. By Sunday night, I had a timeline. The affair had been going on for 4 months. Hotel stays every other Friday. Lunch meetings that lasted 3 hours. Text messages sent at midnight when Zoya thought I was asleep. Monday morning, I sat in my cubicle at Pinnacle Financial, staring at my computer screen and wondering what to do next. Confrontation seemed pointless. Zoya would deny everything, and I'd look like a paranoid husband with trust issues. Divorce attorneys would cost more than I could afford, especially if Zoya decided to fight dirty. "You look terrible," said Jonah, appearing beside my desk with 2 cups of coffee. He worked in accounting but had become my closest friend at the office over the past 3 years. "Rough weekend?" "You could say that." I accepted the coffee gratefully. "Can I ask you something hypothetical?" "Shoot." "If you discovered your spouse was cheating, what would you do?" Jonah raised an eyebrow. "This is about Zoya?" I nodded. "Evidence?" "Enough to convince a jury." He sat on the edge of my desk, lowering his voice. "Depends on what you want. Revenge, closure, or just to get out clean." "What if I wanted all 3? "Then you'd need help." He glanced around the office, making sure we weren't overheard. "And you'd need to be smarter than they are." That afternoon, I made my first real decision. Instead of confronting Zoya, I would investigate further. Instead of hiring lawyers immediately, I would gather more evidence. And instead of suffering alone, I would find allies. The plan started forming during my commute home. If Darren Halloway was married, his wife deserved to know the truth. If Zoya thought she was being clever, She was about to learn that IT security managers are professionally paranoid, and if they wanted to play games with other people's lives, I would show them what real strategy looked like. I arrived home to find Zoya cooking dinner, something she hadn't done in months. She was wearing the dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, the one she claimed was too fancy for everyday occasions. "Special occasion?" I asked, hanging up my jacket. "Can't a wife cook for her husband without an ulterior motive?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "How was your day?" "Productive." I sat at the kitchen counter, watching her move around our kitchen with nervous energy. "We're implementing new security protocols next week, monitoring email traffic, tracking file transfers, that sort of thing." Her hand paused while stirring the sauce. "Sounds invasive. Only if you have something to hide." She turned to face me, spatula in hand. "Are you trying to tell me something, Keaton?" This was my moment. I could have confronted her right then, laid out everything I'd discovered, and demanded an explanation. Instead, I smiled and shook my head. "Just making conversation. Something smells amazing." Dinner was tense despite Zoya's efforts to appear normal. She asked about my work, complimented my haircut, and mentioned that Tamsin was planning a girls' weekend trip to the mountains. Everything felt rehearsed, like she was reading from a script designed to portray marital bliss. "When is this trip happening?" I asked. "Next Friday through Sunday. I know it's short notice, but Tamsin found this great cabin rental, and you know how she gets when she has an idea." I knew exactly how Tamsin got. I also knew that next Friday was when Darren had booked another hotel room, according to the USB files. "Sounds fun. You should go." Zoya blinked, clearly expecting resistance. "Really? You don't mind?" "Why would I mind? You work hard. You deserve a break." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Just promise me you'll be careful on those mountain roads." That night, after Zoya fell asleep, I sat in our living room with my laptop and began phase 2 of my investigation. If my wife wanted to spend the weekend with her lover, I would make sure it was memorable for all the wrong reasons. I started with Ilara Trenix. Her event planning business had an impressive website showcasing elegant weddings, corporate galas, and charity fundraisers. Her client testimonials praised her attention to detail and ability to handle crisis situations with grace. Most importantly, her contact information was readily available. I crafted an email carefully, posing as someone interested in planning a corporate event. We exchanged several messages over the next 2 days, establishing a professional rapport. She was intelligent, thorough, and clearly took pride in her work. She also mentioned being married to a lawyer, though she never used Darren's name. Wednesday evening, I made the call that would change everything. "Mrs. Trenix, this is Keaton Marin. I believe we need to talk about our spouses." The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. "I'm sorry, I don't understand," she said finally. "Your husband Darren has been having an affair with my wife Zoya. I have evidence, and I think you deserve to know." Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice was steady but cold. "What kind of evidence?" I told her about the USB drive, the hotel reservations, the email threads. I offered to meet in person and share copies of everything I'd found. I explained that I wasn't looking for money or trying to cause drama. I just thought she had a right to know the truth. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because they're planning to spend this weekend together, and I'm tired of being made a fool." "Where do you want to meet?" We arranged to meet Thursday evening at a coffee shop downtown, somewhere public but private enough for sensitive conversation. I spent Thursday at work trying to focus on mundane security updates while my mind raced through possible scenarios for the evening ahead. Ilara Trenix was not what I expected. She was elegant, but not flashy, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and intelligent green eyes that missed nothing. She ordered black coffee and studied the documents I'd brought with the intensity of someone reviewing a business contract. "How long have you known?" she asked without looking up. "I found the USB drive 4 days ago, but I've suspected something for months." "I've suspected for longer." She closed the folder and met my eyes. "Darren has been working late more frequently, taking weekend business trips that don't appear on his calendar. He's also been more attentive at home, which usually means he's feeling guilty about something. What do you want to do about it?" She smiled, and it was neither warm nor pleasant. "I want to make sure they understand the consequences of their choices." We talked for 2 hours, sharing information and developing a strategy that would protect both of us while ensuring maximum impact on our cheating spouses. Ilara was methodical, intelligent, and absolutely ruthless when it came to protecting her interests. "I have a prenuptial agreement," she explained. "Darren insisted on it before we married, claiming it was standard practice for attorneys. What he didn't consider is that it includes an infidelity clause that heavily favors the wronged party." "Meaning?" "Meaning, if I can prove he cheated, he loses the house, his investment portfolio, and his stake in the law firm partnership." I whistled softly. "That's significant leverage." "Your wife works in finance, correct? She understands money and reputation. Those are the areas where we can apply the most pressure." We exchanged contact information and agreed to coordinate our actions. Ilara would handle the legal aspects while I focused on gathering additional evidence and managing the social fallout. We would move simultaneously to prevent either Darren or Zoya from warning the other. Friday morning, Zoya packed her weekend bag with unusual care. She included outfits I'd never seen before, expensive lingerie that definitely wasn't meant for a girl's trip, and enough makeup to supply a small salon. "Have fun with Tamsin," I said, kissing her cheek as she headed for the door. "I'll call you tonight," she promised. She didn't call, but I knew exactly where she was: the Grandview Hotel, room 412, registered under Darren's name. Ilara and I had confirmed the reservation that morning. Instead of spending Friday night feeling sorry for myself, I used the time productively. I accessed our joint bank accounts and moved most of the funds to a separate account in my name only. I documented every suspicious expense from the past 6 months. I also changed the passwords on our shared email accounts and social media profiles. Saturday morning, Ilara texted me. "Phase 2 begins Monday. Are you ready?" I texted back, "Absolutely." Monday arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. I sat at my desk, reviewing the evidence folder one more time before implementing our plan. Jonah stopped by with coffee and moral support. "You sure about this?" he asked. Too late for second thoughts now. At exactly 10:30 a.m., I called Zoya's office and asked to speak with her supervisor. I explained that there had been a family emergency and that Zoya might need to leave early. Then I called Zoya herself. "I need you to come to my office immediately," I said without preamble. "What? Why? I'm in the middle of—" "Just come. It's important." She arrived 45 minutes later, clearly annoyed and slightly out of breath from rushing across downtown. She found me sitting calmly at my desk with a woman she'd never seen before. "Zoya," I said, not bothering to stand. "I'd like you to meet Ilara Trenix. She's married to your lover and we're filing for divorce together." The color drained from Zoya's face so quickly, I thought she might faint. She stood frozen in the doorway of my cubicle, staring at Ilara with the expression of someone who'd just realized they'd been walking through a minefield. "I don't know what you're talking about," Zoya said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. Ilara stood gracefully, extending her hand as if they were meeting at a dinner party. "Please, sit down. We have quite a bit to discuss." "I'm not sitting anywhere. Keaton, what is this? Who is this woman?" "This woman," Ilara said calmly, "is Darren Holloway's wife. I believe you know him quite well." I gestured to the empty chair beside my desk. "Sit, Zoya. You're making a scene." She glanced around the office, suddenly aware that several of my coworkers were watching our little drama unfold. With obvious reluctance, she perched on the edge of the chair, clutching her purse like a shield. "Now then," Alara continued, settling back into her seat with the poise of someone completely in control. "Let's discuss your weekend at the Grandview Hotel." Zoya's mouth opened and closed without producing sound. "Room 412, I added helpfully. "Registered under Darren's name, paid for with his corporate credit card. The same card he used for dinner at Romano's on Friday night and breakfast at the hotel restaurant Saturday morning." "You've been spying on me?" Zoya found her voice, directing her outrage at me. "I've been protecting my interests," I replied. "Something you should have considered before deciding to cheat on your husband with a married man." Alara opened her briefcase and withdrew a manila folder. "I have copies of your email correspondence with my husband. 4 months of messages detailing your affair, including quite explicit discussions about your weekend activities." "This is harassment," Zoya said, but she was staring at the folder with obvious fear. "This is evidence," Alara corrected. "Evidence that will be presented to divorce attorneys this afternoon." "You can't prove anything." I turned my computer monitor so Zoya could see the screen. "Hotel security cameras from last Friday. There you are, checking in with Darren at 6:47 p.m. And there you are again Saturday morning, having breakfast together in the hotel restaurant." Zoya's face went from pale to flushed. "You had me followed?" "I didn't need to. Modern technology makes surveillance remarkably easy, especially when the subjects aren't trying very hard to hide their activities." Alara leaned forward slightly. "Here's what's going to happen. You and Darren are going to end your affair immediately. You're going to cooperate with our divorce proceedings without contest, and you're going to accept whatever settlement terms we offer." "And if I don't?" "Then we make this public," I said simply. "Your employer, your friends, your family, everyone gets to see the evidence, every email, every photo, every receipt." "You wouldn't dare." Alara smiled. "Try me." The three of us sat in silence for several moments. Around us, the office continued its normal Monday morning routine, but I could feel the curious glances from my coworkers. This conversation was already generating gossip that would spread through the building by lunchtime. "I need to think about this," Zoya said finally. "You have until 5 p.m. today," Alara replied. "After that, we proceed without your cooperation." "That's not enough time." "It's more time than you gave our marriages before you decided to destroy them." Zoya stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "This isn't over." "Yes," I said quietly. "It is." After she left, Alara and I sat in companionable silence for a few minutes. My phone buzzed with a text message from Zoya. "We need to talk. Tonight. Home." I showed the message to Alara. "She's going to try to negotiate. Let her. The more she talks, the more evidence we gather." Alara closed her briefcase with a satisfied click. "I'm meeting with my attorney at 2 p.m. Are you ready for this?" "I've been ready for months. I just didn't know it until now." That evening, I arrived home to find Zoya pacing our living room like a caged animal. She'd changed from her work clothes into jeans and a sweater, and her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked younger and more vulnerable than she had in months. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "I'm listening." "This whole thing with Alara, it's a mistake. You don't understand what really happened." I sat down on the couch, genuinely curious about what story she would try to sell me. "Enlighten me." "Darren told me he was separated. He said the marriage was over and they were just waiting for the paperwork to be finalized." "And you believed him?" "Why wouldn't I? He's a lawyer, Keaton. He knows about these things." "He's also a married man who was lying to his wife while sleeping with you." "Did that not suggest he might be lying to you too?" Zoya sat down across from me, leaning forward earnestly. "I never meant for this to happen. It started as just friendship. We met at a networking event, and he was charming and funny and interested in my work." When was this networking event? 6 months ago. 2 months before the affair started, according to the emails. She flinched. You read all of them? Every word, including the ones where you discussed leaving me for him. I was confused. I thought I loved him. Thought? I realized this weekend that he's not who I thought he was. He's selfish and demanding and... She trailed off, apparently realizing that criticizing her lover wasn't helping her case. And married, I finished, just like I told you he would be. You never told me anything about Darren. Because I didn't know about Darren until 4 days ago. If you'd been honest with me, we could have worked through this. Zoya's eyes filled with tears. Can we still work through it? I'll end things with him completely. We can go to counseling, take a vacation, start over. I studied her face, looking for signs of genuine remorse. What I saw instead was desperation and calculation. She wasn't sorry about the affair. She was sorry about getting caught. It's too late for that, I said gently. The divorce papers are being filed tomorrow. Keaton, please, I made a mistake, but we can fix this. No, we can't. And even if we could, I don't want to. The tears started flowing in earnest then. What about our life together? Our plans? The house we were going to buy? You should have thought about that before you decided to plan a different future with someone else. She cried for several minutes while I sat quietly, feeling oddly detached from the whole scene. 6 months ago, seeing Zoya cry would have broken my heart. Now it just felt like a performance designed to manipulate my emotions. What happens now? She asked when the tears subsided. Now you pack some clothes and stay somewhere else while we sort out the legal details. This is my home, too. And it will be until the divorce is finalized. But I can't live with you anymore, and I suspect you don't really want to live with me either. She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands folded in her lap. Where am I supposed to go? Tamsin's place, your sister's house, a hotel. I don't really care, as long as it's not here. You're being cruel. I'm being practical. This marriage is over, Zoya. We can end it with dignity, or we can make it messy and expensive, but we can't pretend it didn't happen. She went upstairs to pack, and I heard her moving around our bedroom, opening drawers and closet doors. When she came back down with a suitcase and a garment bag, her tears had been replaced by cold anger. You'll regret this, she said. Maybe, but not as much as I regret the last 4 months of lies. After she left, I poured myself a drink and called Alara to update her on the conversation. How did she take it? Alara asked. About as well as expected. She tried the innocent victim routine, then moved on to bargaining, and finished with threats. Darren went straight to anger. He accused me of hiring a private investigator and threatened to sue you for harassment. Are you worried? Not even slightly. He's posturing because he knows he's trapped. She paused. How are you holding up? Better than I expected. It feels good to finally stop pretending everything is fine. It gets easier. The hardest part is admitting that the person you married isn't who you thought they were. We talked for another few minutes about logistics and timeline. The divorce papers would be filed simultaneously Wednesday morning. Ilara had already spoken with her attorney about the prenuptial agreement, and the infidelity clause would indeed cost Darren significantly. What about your job situation? She asked. I'm not sure yet. Zoya might try to cause problems for me at work, claim I'm unstable or vindictive. Document everything. Every conversation, every email, every interaction. If she tries to sabotage your career, you'll need evidence to protect yourself. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and realized how peaceful it felt without the constant tension of wondering what Zoya was hiding. For the first time in months, I wasn't checking her phone messages or analyzing her explanations for working late. The relief was overwhelming. Tuesday morning brought the first sign that Zoya intended to fight back. My supervisor, Mr. Rickert, called me into his office before 9 a.m. Keaton, I received a concerning call yesterday from your wife. What kind of concerning call? She's worried about your mental health. She mentioned erratic behavior, paranoid accusations, and possible substance abuse. I had expected this, but it still stung. Did she provide any specific examples? She said you've been following her, accessing her personal accounts, and making threats. Mr. Rickert, I'm going through a divorce. My wife has been having an affair, and we're dividing our assets. I've been documenting our interactions for legal purposes, but I haven't threatened anyone or used any substances. He studied my face carefully. She mentioned that you might deny everything. I pulled out my phone and showed him the folder of evidence I'd compiled. These are emails between my wife and her lover. These are hotel receipts and credit card statements. This is a photo of them together at the hotel. I'm not paranoid. I'm informed. Rickert reviewed the documents with obvious discomfort. This is a personal matter, Keaton. I don't want it affecting your work performance. It won't. I'm handling everything through proper legal channels. And the allegations about following her and making threats? Completely false. I've spoken with her twice since discovering the affair. Once yesterday morning in the presence of a witness, and once last night when she came to our apartment to collect her belongings. Who was the witness? The wife of the man she's been sleeping with. We're coordinating our divorce proceedings. Rickert leaned back in his chair, processing this information. That's unusual, but effective and completely legal. He nodded slowly. Just keep me informed if this situation escalates. I don't want any workplace drama. Understood. The rest of Tuesday passed quietly, but I could feel the change in atmosphere around the office. Word was spreading about my marital problems, and I caught several coworkers whispering and glancing in my direction. By Wednesday morning, everyone would know that Keaton Marin's wife had been cheating on him. Wednesday arrived with unseasonably warm weather and clear skies. At exactly 9 a.m., Ilara and I walked into our respective attorneys' offices and filed for divorce from our cheating spouses. By 10 a.m., both Zoya and Darren had been served with papers. My phone started ringing at 10:15. You actually did it, Zoya said when I answered. I told you I would. I thought you were bluffing. I don't bluff about important things. Darren says we can fight this. He says you don't have enough evidence to prove anything. Darren is about to lose his house, his money, and his partnership in the law firm. He's not exactly a reliable source of legal advice right now. What do you want from me, Keaton? I want you to sign the papers and accept the settlement terms. I want you to stop spreading lies about my mental health. And I want you to disappear from my life as quickly and quietly as possible. And if I don't, then we do this the hard way, and everyone gets to see just how thorough my documentation really is. She hung up without saying goodbye. Ilara called an hour later with an update on Darren's reaction. He's hired a lawyer and plans to contest everything. He's claiming the prenup is invalid and that I'm trying to extort him. How strong is your legal position? Unassailable. The prenup was drafted by his own law firm, and the infidelity clause is ironclad. His attorney will figure that out soon enough. What's our next move? We wait, and we prepare for them to get desperate. They didn't wait long to get desperate. Thursday morning, I arrived at work to find my computer access had been suspended pending an internal investigation. HR Director Janet Morrison was waiting at my desk with a thick folder and a concerned expression. Keaton, we need to discuss some serious allegations that have been brought to our attention. What kind of allegations? Misuse of company resources, unauthorized access to confidential information, and workplace harassment. I felt my jaw clench. Who made these allegations? I can't reveal that information, but we take all complaints seriously. It was my wife, wasn't it? Janet's expression confirmed my suspicion. Please come with me to conference room B. The next 2 hours were among the most humiliating of my life. Zoya had crafted a detailed complaint alleging that I had used company computers to spy on her personal communications. that I had accessed confidential client information to intimidate her, and that I had created a hostile work environment by involving other employees in my personal problems. "These are serious charges," Janet said after reading through the complaint. "If substantiated, they could result in termination and possible criminal charges. They're also completely false. Can you prove that?" I pulled out my personal laptop and opened the evidence folder. Everything I gathered about my wife's affair came from her own devices and public records. I never accessed company systems for personal use, and I certainly never viewed confidential client information. What about involving other employees? I had one conversation with Jonah about my marital problems, and I met with Darren Holloway's wife in my cubicle on Monday. Neither interaction involved company business or confidential information. Janet reviewed my evidence with the same uncomfortable expression that Mr. Rickert had worn. "This is quite extensive. I'm thorough. It's what makes me good at my job. We'll need to conduct a full investigation. Until then, you're suspended without pay." "For how long?" "Until we can verify your claims and review our security logs." I gathered my personal belongings and left the building under the curious stares of my coworkers. Jonah caught up with me in the parking lot. "What the hell happened?" "Zoya filed a complaint claiming I used company resources to spy on her." "That's ridiculous. You did everything on your own time with your own equipment." "Can you prove that?" He thought for a moment. "Actually, yes. I was with you during most of your research, and you always used your personal laptop. Plus, our IT logs will show you never accessed anything unusual." "Will you testify to that if needed?" "Absolutely. Zoya's trying to destroy your career because she got caught cheating. That's not happening on my watch." I drove home feeling frustrated but not defeated. Zoya was playing exactly the game I had expected. When confronted with evidence of her wrongdoing, she attacked the messenger. But she had made a crucial mistake by involving my employer. Now I had grounds to file counter-complaints for defamation and harassment. Alara called while I was reviewing my employment contract and looking up wrongful termination attorneys. "Darren tried something similar," she said. "He called my biggest client and suggested they might want to reconsider working with someone going through a messy divorce." "Did it work?" "It backfired spectacularly. The client called me to ask if I needed any help dealing with my husband's harassment." "What did you tell them?" "The truth, that my husband had been cheating, and now he was trying to destroy my business out of spite." "How did they react?" "They offered to provide character references for the divorce proceedings and suggested I might want to plan their next event as a celebration of my freedom." I laughed despite my frustration. "At least one of us is having a good day. Don't worry about the work situation." Zoya overplayed her hand. "When your employer investigates her claims, they'll find out she's lying." "How can you be so confident?" "Because desperate people make mistakes. And Zoya is definitely desperate." That afternoon, I received a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a man's voice said, "This is Darren Holloway. We need to talk." "I don't think that's a good idea. Look, this whole situation has gotten out of hand. Maybe we can work something out." "What kind of something?" "Meet me for coffee. One conversation, no lawyers, no wives, just two guys trying to figure out how to minimize the damage." I almost hung up, but curiosity got the better of me. "When and where?" "Starbucks on 5th Street, 1 hour." Darren Holloway was exactly what I had expected. Tall, well-dressed, and radiating the kind of confidence that comes from years of privilege. He was already seated at a corner table when I arrived, nursing what looked like an expensive coffee drink. "Thanks for coming," he said, standing to shake my hand. I ignored the gesture and sat down across from him. "You have 10 minutes. Right to business. I respect that." He settled back into his chair. "Look, I think we both made some mistakes here." "We?" "You and your wife were having problems. Zoya was lonely and vulnerable. I was going through a rough patch with Alara. Things happened that shouldn't have happened. Things like a 4-month affair involving hotel rooms and romantic getaways." He winced. It got more serious than either of us intended. What do you want, Darren? I want to make this right. Zoya and I have ended our relationship. We both regret the pain we've caused. Maybe there's a way to handle the divorces without destroying everyone's lives. You mean without you losing your partnership and your house? I mean without turning this into a public spectacle that hurts everyone involved. I studied his face, looking for signs of genuine remorse. What I saw instead was the same calculation I'd seen in Zoya's expression. He was sorry he got caught, not sorry he did it. What are you proposing? Ilara and I work out our differences privately. You and Zoya do the same. No contested divorces, no public allegations, no damaged reputations. And you get to keep everything while Zoya and I pretend we're fine with being betrayed? That's not what I'm saying. That's exactly what you're saying. I leaned forward. Let me ask you something, Darren. When you were planning your weekend getaways with my wife, did you think about how it would affect me? I tried not to think about you at all. At least you're honest about that. Look, I know I screwed up, but destroying my career won't undo what happened. No, but it might prevent you from doing it to someone else. He sat back, his friendly demeanor evaporating. You're making a mistake. I have resources you don't have. I can make this very expensive for you. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining reality. You're a middle management IT guy going through a divorce. I'm a partner in a major law firm with connections throughout the city. Who do you think has more leverage? I stood up, genuinely amused by his arrogance. I guess we'll find out. Keaton, wait. He grabbed my arm as I started to leave. Don't make this personal. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. You made it personal when you decided to sleep with my wife. That evening, I called Ilara to report on the conversation. She listened without interrupting, then laughed when I described Darren's attempt at intimidation. He tried the same approach with me last night, she said. Showed up at my office with flowers and apologies, claiming he wanted to save our marriage. What did you tell him? I told him that if he ever contacted me again outside of legal proceedings, I would file a restraining order. How did he react? About as well as you'd expect. He's not used to people saying no to him. Are you worried about his threats? Not even slightly. Darren's reputation is built on his marriage to me and his image as a stable family man. When this becomes public, his clients will start questioning his judgment and reliability. When do you think that will happen? Soon. The legal community in this city is smaller than you might think. Word is already spreading that Darren Holloway is getting divorced for infidelity. Friday brought good news and bad news. The good news was that Pinnacle Financial's IT investigation had cleared me of all wrongdoing. The security logs showed I had never accessed confidential information, and my browsing history confirmed that all my research had been conducted on personal devices during lunch breaks and after hours. The bad news was that Zoya had doubled down on her accusations, now claiming I had threatened her physically and was stalking her around the city. She's filed a complaint with the police, Janet Morrison informed me during my reinstatement meeting. For what? Harassment and intimidation. She claims you've been following her and making threatening phone calls. I haven't spoken to her since Wednesday, and I certainly haven't been following her around. Can you prove that? I pulled out my phone and showed her my call log and location history. I've been at home or here at work every day this week. No calls to Zoya, no visits to her workplace or Tamsin's apartment where she's staying. She also claims you've been sending threatening emails. From what address? I changed all our shared passwords, and my personal email account has a complete message history that you're welcome to review. Janet looked increasingly uncomfortable. Keaton, I have to ask, is there any possibility that your wife might be lying about these allegations? Given that she's been lying about having an affair for 4 months, I'd say it's not just possible, but probable. Why would she make false accusations? Because she's desperate. Her affair has been exposed, She's facing a divorce that will cost her financially, and she's trying to make me look like the bad guy. That's a serious allegation. It's also provable. Every claim she's made can be verified or debunked through phone records, security cameras, and digital evidence. Janet spent the next hour reviewing my evidence and cross-referencing it with Zoya's complaints. When she finished, her expression was grim. "Keaton, I owe you an apology. It appears your wife has been making false accusations in an attempt to damage your reputation and career. What happens now? Now we document everything and prepare for the possibility that she might escalate her campaign against you." Meaning? Meaning you need to be very careful about any interaction with her. Keep records of everything, avoid being alone with her, and don't give her any ammunition to use against you. I returned to work that afternoon with my access restored and my reputation intact, but I knew this was just the beginning. Zoya had shown she was willing to lie to police and employers to get what she wanted. The question was how far she would go before this was over. The answer came Saturday morning when I woke up to find my car windshield smashed and my tires slashed. I stood in my apartment complex parking lot at 7 in the morning, staring at my vandalized car and wondering if Zoya had finally lost her mind completely. The windshield was spider-webbed with cracks, all 4 tires were flat, and someone had keyed "liar" into the paint on the driver's side door. My first instinct was to call the police, but I hesitated. Zoya had already made false accusations about my behavior. If I reported this vandalism and pointed the finger at her, it might look like I was retaliating for her complaints. On the other hand, if I didn't report it, she might escalate to something worse. I took photos from every angle, then called Alara. "Someone vandalized my car last night," I said when she answered. "Zoya?" "That's my assumption, but I can't prove it." "Are you going to file a police report?" "I'm not sure. She's already accused me of harassment. If I accuse her of vandalism, it might look like we're both making things up. Or it might establish a pattern of escalating behavior on her part." Alara was quiet for a moment. "Check with your apartment complex. They might have security cameras in the parking lot." That was excellent advice. I walked to the leasing office and explained the situation to the weekend manager. 20 minutes later, I was watching grainy black and white footage of a figure in dark clothing attacking my car at 2:30 a.m. "Can you make out who it is?" the manager asked. The figure was wearing a hoodie and kept their face turned away from the cameras, but something about the height and build looked familiar. "I'm not certain, but I have suspicions. Do you want me to call the police?" "Let me think about it." I spent the rest of the morning dealing with insurance companies and auto repair shops. The damage was extensive enough that my car would be in the shop for at least a week. I arranged for a rental car and tried to focus on practical matters rather than the growing anger in my chest. Alara called that afternoon with disturbing news. "Darren came by my office this morning," she said. "He was agitated and making threats." "What kind of threats?" "He said I was going to regret humiliating him. He claimed he had information that would destroy my business and my reputation." "What kind of information?" "He wouldn't say, but he seemed confident that he could turn this whole situation around." "Are you worried?" "I'm concerned. Darren has access to legal resources and private investigators. If he's decided to fight dirty, he could cause real problems." "What do you want to do?" "I want to accelerate our timeline. The longer this drags out, the more opportunities they have to cause damage." That evening, I received a call from Tamsin. Zoya's best friend had never been my favorite person. She was gossipy, manipulative, and had always encouraged Zoya's worst impulses. But her call surprised me. "Keaton, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "About what?" "About Zoya. She's staying at my place, and I'm worried about her mental state." "What do you mean?" "She's not sleeping, she's barely eating, and she's obsessed with finding ways to hurt you and Alara." "Such as?" She spent all day yesterday researching your employment history and looking for people who might have complaints about you. She's also been calling Darren constantly, trying to coordinate some kind of counterattack. Why are you telling me this? Tamsin was quiet for a long moment. Because I've known Zoya for 15 years, and I've never seen her like this. She's talking about ruining your career, destroying your reputation, making you pay for humiliating her. I didn't humiliate her. She humiliated herself by having an affair. That's not how she sees it. In her mind, you and Alara conspired to trap her and Darren. We exposed the truth. That's not the same thing as trapping someone. I know that. But Zoya doesn't. She thinks you're the villain in this story. What do you want me to do about it? I want you to be careful. Zoya is smart, she's angry, and she has nothing left to lose. That's a dangerous combination. After Tamsin hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and tried to process this information. My wife of 6 years was apparently plotting my destruction with the help of her lover and her best friend. The woman I had once planned to buy a house with was now researching ways to ruin my life. I called Alara and shared Tamsin's warning. We need to move faster, she said immediately. If they're planning something, we need to get ahead of it. What do you have in mind? I'm meeting with my attorney Monday morning to finalize the divorce filing. The prenup is clear. Darren's infidelity voids any claim he has to our shared assets. Once that's official, he loses his leverage. What about Zoya? What leverage does she have over you? I thought about it. None, really. We don't have significant shared assets, no children, no business partnerships. The worst she can do is try to damage my reputation. Then we make sure her credibility is destroyed before she can damage yours. Monday morning brought a development I hadn't expected. Mr. Rickert called me into his office before 9 a.m., but this time he wasn't alone. Janet Morrison from HR was there, along with a man I didn't recognize. Keaton, this is Detective Williams from the city police, Rickert said. He'd like to ask you some questions. My stomach dropped. About what? About your wife's allegations of harassment and intimidation, Detective Williams said. She's filed a formal complaint and we're required to investigate. I've already provided evidence that her allegations are false. I'd like to review that evidence if you don't mind. For the next hour, I walked Detective Williams through the timeline of my divorce, the evidence of Zoya's affair, and the documentation that disproved her claims about my behavior. I showed him phone records, location data, and email logs that contradicted every allegation she had made. This is quite thorough, he said when I finished. I work in IT security. Documentation is part of my job. Your wife claims you've been following her and making threatening phone calls. My phone records show no calls to her number since last Wednesday. My location data shows I've been at home or work every day. She also claims you vandalized her car. That was news to me. When was her car allegedly vandalized? Saturday night. The same night my car was actually vandalized? I showed him photos of my damaged vehicle. Detective, someone smashed my windshield and slashed my tires Saturday night. I have security camera footage from my apartment complex. Detective Williams studied the photos with obvious interest. You didn't report this? I was considering it, but I wanted to think through the implications first. What implications? My wife has been making false accusations about my behavior. If I accused her of vandalizing my car, it might look like we were both making things up. Or it might show a pattern of escalating behavior on her part. That's what I'm starting to think. Detective Williams spent another 30 minutes reviewing my evidence and asking detailed questions about my interactions with Zoya. When he finished, his expression was thoughtful. Mr. Marin, I'm going to be frank with you. Your wife's story doesn't hold up under scrutiny. The evidence you've provided contradicts her allegations, and the timing of her complaints suggests she might be trying to deflect attention from her own behavior. What happens now? Now I investigate her claims about car vandalism and see if her story is any more credible than her harassment allegations. After Detective Williams left, Mr. Rickert and Janet Morrison looked at me with expressions that mixed sympathy and embarrassment. "Keaton, I owe you another apology," Janet said. "It's becoming clear that your wife has been making false accusations in an attempt to damage your reputation. I appreciate that. Is there anything we can do to help? Just document everything. If this escalates further, I might need character references." That afternoon, Alara called with an update on her legal proceedings. "The divorce is official," she said. "Darren's attorney tried to challenge the prenup, but the infidelity clause is ironclad. He's losing the house, the investment portfolio, and his partnership stake." "How did he react?" "Badly. He accused me of entrapment and threatened to sue everyone involved." "Can he do that?" "He can try, but he doesn't have grounds. Everything we did was legal and justified." "What's his next move?" "I'm not sure, but I suspect he's going to get more desperate before this is over." That evening, I received a call that confirmed Alara's prediction. The caller ID showed Darren's number. "You've destroyed my life," he said without preamble. "You destroyed your own life when you decided to cheat on your wife. I lost everything because of you. You lost everything because of your own choices. This isn't over." "Yes, it is. Your divorce is final, your partnership is gone, and your reputation is ruined. There's nothing left for you to lose. There's still your reputation, and your career, and your peace of mind." The line went quiet, and I realized he had hung up. I immediately called Alara to report the conversation. "He's threatening you directly now," she said. "That's a mistake." "How so?" "Because now we have grounds to file a restraining order, and because desperate men make stupid decisions." "What kind of stupid decisions?" "The kind that get them arrested." Tuesday morning brought the answer to that question. I woke up to find my apartment building's fire alarm blaring and residents evacuating into the parking lot. The fire department arrived within minutes, followed by police and emergency medical personnel. "False alarm," one of the firefighters told the crowd of residents. "Someone pulled the alarm on the 3rd floor, but there's no fire." I lived on the 3rd floor. So did Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who kept to herself, and Jake Morrison, a college student who worked nights and slept during the day. None of us had any reason to pull a fire alarm at 6 a.m. The building manager reviewed the security footage and found what we were looking for. A figure in dark clothing had entered the building through the parking garage and taken the stairs to the 3rd floor. The person had kept their face hidden from cameras, but they had triggered the alarm and left immediately. "Same person who vandalized your car?" the manager asked. "Same height and build," I confirmed. This time I didn't hesitate to call Detective Williams. The pattern of harassment was escalating, and I needed official documentation before someone got hurt. "This is the 3rd incident," I told him when he arrived. "My car, Zoya's false allegations about her car, and now this. Any witnesses who can place your wife at these locations?" "Not directly, but Tamsin called me Saturday night to warn me that Zoya was planning to escalate her campaign against me." "Would Tamsin be willing to make a statement?" "I can ask her." Detective Williams spent an hour reviewing the security footage and interviewing other residents. When he finished, he looked frustrated. "Whoever's doing this is being careful about avoiding identification," he said. "But the pattern suggests someone with personal knowledge of your schedule and habits." "Meaning?" "Meaning they know where you live, where you work, and when you're likely to be home." That describes my wife perfectly. It also describes anyone else who might have access to that information. That afternoon, I called Tamsin and asked if she would speak with Detective Williams about Zoya's behavior. Her response surprised me. "I can't do that," she said. "Why not?" "Because Zoya is my best friend, and I won't betray her confidence." "Even if she's breaking the law? You don't know for certain that she's doing these things." "Who else would have reason to harass me?" Tamsin was quiet for a long moment. "Keaton, I warned you to be careful. That's all I can do." "Is she planning something else?" "I can't discuss that." Tamsin, if Zoya is planning to hurt someone, you have an obligation to. She hung up before I could finish the sentence. That evening, Ilara and I met for dinner at a restaurant downtown. We chose a public place with good lighting and security cameras. Both of us were becoming paranoid about being alone or isolated. Darren's been calling me constantly, she said over appetizers. Threatening, pleading, demanding that I drop the divorce proceedings. Are you worried about him? I'm worried about what he might do if he gets desperate enough. Such as? He still has connections in the legal community. He could spread rumors, file frivolous lawsuits, make my life difficult in ways that are hard to prove or prevent. What about Zoya? What about her? She's escalating her harassment campaign. False police reports, vandalism, fire alarms. What's her endgame? Ilara considered this while sipping her wine. I think she's trying to provoke you into doing something stupid. Like what? Like confronting her physically, like making threats, like giving her real evidence that you're dangerous or unstable. That's not going to happen. Good. Because the moment you lose your temper or make a mistake, she wins. So what do? We stay calm, we document everything, and we wait for them to make a mistake big enough to get them arrested. And if they don't, they will. Desperate people always do. As we were leaving the restaurant, I noticed a familiar car in the parking lot. It was Darren's BMW, parked 3 spaces away from my rental car. The driver's seat was empty, but I could see someone sitting in the passenger seat. Ilara, I said quietly. Don't look back, but I think we're being watched. She tensed, but didn't turn around. Darren's car? Yes, and he's not alone. What do you want to do? Nothing dramatic. Let's just get in our cars and leave normally. Should we call the police? And tell them what? That my wife's lover is sitting in a parking lot? That's not illegal. We walked to our cars at a normal pace, but I could feel eyes watching us. As I started my engine, the BMW pulled out of its parking space and followed us toward the street. This is getting ridiculous, I muttered, calling Ilara on my hands-free system. Are they still following us? I checked my rearview mirror. Yes. What's the point of this? To intimidate us? To gather information? Maybe they're hoping we'll do something they can use against us. Like what? Like lead them to a secret meeting place. Like prove we're having an affair ourselves. The thought hadn't occurred to me, but it made sense. If Zoya and Darren could prove that Ilara and I were romantically involved, it would undermine our credibility and give them ammunition for their own defense. That's actually clever, I admitted. It's also pointless. We've been careful to meet only in public places, and we've documented every interaction. Should we confront them? No. Let's just go home and let them waste their time following us around. I drove home via a circuitous route, making several unnecessary turns to see if the BMW would continue following. It did, staying 2 or 3 cars behind but never losing sight of my rental car. When I finally pulled into my apartment complex, the BMW drove past without stopping. This was getting out of hand. What had started as a straightforward divorce was becoming a campaign of harassment and intimidation. I needed to end this before someone got hurt. The question was how. Wednesday morning brought an unexpected call from my attorney, Patricia Chen, whom I'd hired to handle my divorce proceedings. Keaton, we need to discuss some developments in your case, she said. Can you come in this afternoon? What kind of developments? Zoya's attorney has filed several motions that we need to address. It's better if we discuss this in person. I arrived at Patricia's office at 2 p.m. to find her reviewing a stack of legal documents with a concerned expression. Your wife is fighting the divorce, she said without preamble. On what grounds? She's claiming the marriage can be saved, that you're having a mental health crisis, and that you've been manipulated by Ilara Trenix into filing for divorce. I sat back in my chair, genuinely surprised by the audacity of Zoya's strategy. She's claiming I'm not competent to make my own decisions? That's essentially what she's arguing. She wants the court to order marriage counseling and a psychological evaluation before proceeding with the divorce. Can she do that? She can try. But given the evidence of her infidelity and the false police reports she's filed, her credibility is questionable. What about the harassment campaign? Patricia flipped through several pages. That's where things get interesting. She's claiming that you and Alara have been harassing her and Darren, not the other way around. That's ridiculous. Is it? Think about it from an outside perspective. You discovered your wife's affair and immediately contacted the other man's wife. You coordinated your divorce proceedings and filed simultaneously. You've been meeting regularly and sharing information. We've been protecting our interests legally. I know that, and you know that. But Zoya's attorney is painting it as a conspiracy to destroy two marriages out of spite. I felt a cold realization settling in my stomach. They're trying to flip the narrative. Exactly. Instead of being the victims of infidelity, you and Alara become the vindictive spouses who couldn't accept that your marriages were over. How do we counter that? With evidence. Lots of it. And by making sure you don't give them any ammunition to use against you. That evening, I called Alara to update her on my attorney's concerns. Darren's lawyer is making similar arguments, she said. They're claiming we conspired to entrap them and that the evidence we gathered was obtained illegally. Was it? Of course not. Everything we found was either freely accessible or obtained through legitimate means. But they're trying to muddy the waters. They're trying to create reasonable doubt about our motives and methods. What's our next move? We need to be absolutely perfect from here on out. No mistakes, no emotional reactions, no actions that could be interpreted as vindictive or harassing. That's going to be difficult if they keep escalating their behavior. Then we need to make sure they're the ones who make the big mistake. Thursday morning brought another unwelcome surprise. I arrived at work to find Mr. Rickert waiting at my desk with Janet Morrison and a woman I didn't recognize. Keaton, this is Dr. Sarah Martinez from our Employee Assistance Program, Rickert said. She'd like to speak with you about the stress you've been under recently. What kind of stress? Dr. Martinez smiled professionally. Divorce proceedings can be very difficult, and we want to make sure you have the support you need. Who suggested I needed support? We received some concerns about your emotional state and thought it would be beneficial to check in with you. I felt the trap closing around me. Someone, almost certainly Zoya, had contacted my employer and suggested I was having psychological problems. Now they were offering help that would create a paper trail supporting her claims about my mental health. I appreciate the concern, I said carefully, but I'm managing the situation just fine. Sometimes it's hard to recognize when we're overwhelmed, Dr. Martinez said. Talking to someone neutral can be very helpful. I'm not overwhelmed. I'm dealing with a difficult situation in a methodical, legal manner. Your wife has expressed concern about your behavior lately. There it was. My wife is facing divorce proceedings because she was having an affair. She's been making false accusations to deflect attention from her own behavior. That sounds like a very stressful situation. It is stressful, but it's not affecting my work performance or my ability to function. Mr. Rickert cleared his throat. Keaton, we're not questioning your work performance. We just want to make sure you have resources available if you need them. I understand, and I'll let you know if that changes. Dr. Martinez handed me her business card. Please consider scheduling a session. It's completely confidential, and it might help you process everything you're going through. After they left, I sat at my desk and realized how cleverly Zoya had maneuvered this situation. By expressing concern about my mental health to my employer, she had created a record that could be used to support her claims in divorce court. If I refused counseling, it might look like I was in denial about my problems. If I accepted counseling, it would validate her concerns. I called Patricia Chen and explained the situation. Don't do anything, she advised. Don't refuse counseling outright, but don't schedule sessions either. Just say you're considering it and need time to think. What if they pressure me? Then we document it as workplace harassment and file a complaint with the labor board. That afternoon, I received a text message from an unknown number. Meet me at Riverside Park at 6 p.m. Come alone. Ze. I stared at the message for several minutes, trying to decide how to respond. This was obviously Zoya, asking for a private meeting in an isolated location. Every instinct told me it was a trap. She would either try to provoke me into doing something stupid, or she would claim afterward that I had threatened or attacked her. I forwarded the message to Alara and Patricia, then typed back, "Any communication should go through our attorneys." The response came immediately. "This is important. It's about Darren." I showed the message to Jonah, who was passing by my desk on his way to a meeting. "Don't go," he said immediately. "What if she has information about Darren that could help our case? What if she's planning to accuse you of assault after you meet her in a deserted park?" He was right, of course. But the message nagged at me for the rest of the afternoon. What could Zoya possibly want to tell me about Darren that she couldn't say through lawyers? At 5:30, I made a decision that I hoped I wouldn't regret. I drove to Riverside Park, but instead of going to meet Zoya, I parked where I could observe the meeting area from a distance. If she was planning something, I wanted to see what it was. Zoya arrived at exactly 6 p.m., walking quickly from the parking area to the bench near the river. She was alone, carrying her purse and checking her phone frequently. She looked nervous, glancing around as if she expected someone else to appear. At 6:15, someone did appear. Darren emerged from the trees behind the bench, approaching Zoya from an angle that would have been hidden from view if I had been sitting where she had asked me to meet her. They talked for several minutes, their body language suggesting an intense conversation. Zoya gestured frequently, and Darren appeared to be arguing with her about something. Finally, he handed her a small object, possibly a recording device, and walked back toward the trees. Zoya waited another 10 minutes, then pulled out her phone and made a call. Even from a distance, I could see her growing agitation as she spoke. She ended the call, looked around the park one more time, and walked back to her car. I waited until both cars had left before driving home. The whole scenario confirmed my suspicions. They had been planning to record our conversation, probably hoping I would say something threatening or incriminating that they could use in court. I called Alara to report what I had observed. "They're getting desperate," she said. "That was a risky move." "How so?" "Because now we know they're actively conspiring against us, and because Zoya sent you a text message that proves she initiated the contact." "What do we do with that information?" "We give it to our attorneys and let them decide how to use it." Friday morning brought the development I had been dreading. Detective Williams called to inform me that Zoya had filed another complaint, this time claiming I had followed her to Riverside Park and threatened her. "When did this allegedly happen?" I asked. "Yesterday evening around 6 p.m. "Detective, she sent me a text message asking me to meet her at that location. I have the message on my phone." "She claims you've been harassing her with text messages." "From what number? I haven't contacted her directly since our divorce was filed." She provided a screenshot of the message asking her to meet at the park. I felt my jaw clench. "That's impossible. I never sent any such message." "Can you prove that?" "Yes. My phone records will show every message I've sent and received, and I have the message she sent me asking for the meeting." Detective Williams was quiet for a moment. "Mr. Marin, can you come to the station this afternoon? I'd like to review all the communications between you and your wife." "Of course." I spent my lunch break gathering phone records, screenshots, and location data that would prove my version of events. When I arrived at the police station, Detective Williams was waiting with a thick file and a skeptical expression. "Let's go through this chronologically," he said. For the next 2 hours, we reviewed every interaction between Zoya and me since the divorce proceedings began. The evidence was overwhelming. She had initiated most of the contact. Her claims about harassment were contradicted by phone records, and her allegations about threats were unsupported by any credible evidence. "Mr. Marin," Detective Williams said when we finished, "I'm going to be frank with you. Your wife appears to be making false accusations in an attempt to manipulate the legal system. What happens now? Now I recommend that the district attorney's office consider filing charges against her for filing false police reports. Will they do that? Given the pattern of behavior and the evidence contradicting her claims, I think there's a good chance." That evening, I met Ilara for dinner at the same restaurant where we had been followed earlier in the week. This time, we were more careful about checking for surveillance before and after our meal. "My attorney thinks we're close to a breakthrough," she said over dessert. "What kind of breakthrough?" "Darren's lawyer is starting to realize that his client's position is untenable. The prenup is ironclad, the evidence of infidelity is overwhelming, and the harassment campaign is backfiring." "What about Zoya?" "Her attorney is probably coming to similar conclusions. Filing false police reports was a major mistake. So what happens next? We wait for them to make their final mistake. What if they don't? What if they just keep escalating until someone gets hurt?" Ilara was quiet for a moment, considering the question. "Then we make sure we're not the ones who get hurt." As we were leaving the restaurant, I noticed the same BMW parked across the street. This time, I was ready for it. "They're watching us again," I told Ilara. "Good. Let's give them something to watch." Instead of going directly to our cars, we walked slowly around the block, staying on well-lit streets with plenty of pedestrian traffic. The BMW followed at a distance, trying to remain inconspicuous. "What's the point of this?" I asked. "They're hoping we'll do something stupid. Meet at a hotel, go to one of our apartments, anything that suggests we're having an affair. Are we going to give them what they want? We're going to give them what they deserve." Ilara led me to a busy coffee shop 2 blocks from the restaurant. We ordered drinks and sat at a table near the window where we could see the BMW parked across the street. "Now what?" I asked. "Now we wait for them to get bored and leave." We sat in the coffee shop for an hour, talking about mundane topics and occasionally glancing toward the street. The BMW never moved, and I could see 2 figures in the front seats watching our every move. Finally, Ilara stood up and walked to the counter. She spoke briefly with the barista, who nodded and picked up the phone. 5 minutes later, a police car pulled up behind the BMW. "What did you tell them?" I asked as we watched 2 officers approach the car. "That there was a suspicious vehicle that had been following customers and sitting outside the shop for over an hour." The officers spoke with the occupants of the BMW for several minutes, then watched as the car drove away. One of the officers came into the coffee shop and spoke briefly with the barista, who pointed toward our table. "Evening, folks," the officer said when he reached us. "The people in that car claimed they were waiting for friends. Are you the friends they were waiting for?" "No, officer," Ilara said. "We've never seen them before." "They seem to know who you were. That's concerning. We've been having some problems with harassment lately." The officer took down our names and contact information, then advised us to call if we noticed the car following us again. After he left, Ilara and I finished our coffee and went to our respective cars. "That was brilliant," I told her as we stood in the parking lot. "That was necessary. They needed to understand that we're not going to be intimidated. What's our next move? We go home, document everything that happened tonight, and wait for them to make their final mistake. How do you know they'll make one? Because desperate people always do, and they're running out of options." As I drove home, I reflected on how much my life had changed in just 2 weeks. I had gone from being a naive husband who trusted his wife to being a strategic player in a complex game of legal and social warfare. I had learned to document everything, anticipate attacks, and respond to threats with calm calculation rather than emotional reaction. Most importantly, I had learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be a victim. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new accusations, and probably new attempts at manipulation. But I was ready for them. Zoya and Darren had taught me how to fight dirty. Now, I was going to teach them how to lose. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that usually made me want to spend the day outdoors. Instead, I found myself sitting in Patricia Chen's office at 9 a.m., reviewing what she called the final phase of our strategy. The district attorney's office has agreed to file charges against Zoya for filing false police reports, she said, sliding a document across her desk. 3 counts of providing false information to law enforcement. When will she be arrested? Monday morning. But here's the interesting part. Detective Williams thinks she might try to flee before then. Why would she run? Because filing false police reports is a felony in this state. If convicted, she could face up to 3 years in prison. I felt a mixture of satisfaction and concern. Satisfaction because Zoya was finally facing consequences for her lies. Concern because desperate people do desperate things. What about Darren? Alara's divorce is finalized, and he's lost everything the prenup specified. His law firm has also started disciplinary proceedings that will likely result in disbarment. So we won? Patricia smiled grimly. We survived. Whether that constitutes winning depends on what happens next. Meaning? Meaning cornered animals are dangerous. Both Zoya and Darren have lost everything they cared about. They have nothing left to lose, which makes them unpredictable. I left Patricia's office with mixed feelings. The legal battle was essentially over. Zoya would face criminal charges, Darren had been financially ruined, and both of their reputations were destroyed. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the real confrontation was still coming. That feeling proved prophetic when I arrived home to find my apartment door standing open. I stood in the hallway for several minutes, listening for sounds of movement inside. When I heard nothing, I called 911 and waited for police to arrive before entering my home. The damage was extensive but targeted. My computer had been destroyed, my files scattered across the floor, and every photograph of Zoya and me had been torn to pieces. But nothing appeared to be missing. This wasn't a burglary, it was a message. Detective Williams arrived 20 minutes after the uniformed officers and surveyed the damage with professional interest. Same person who's been harassing you? He asked. That would be my guess. Any idea how they got in? The building manager appeared in my doorway, looking embarrassed and concerned. Mr. Marin, I'm so sorry. A woman claiming to be your wife convinced the maintenance staff to let her in. She said she needed to collect some personal belongings. Did anyone verify her identity? She had a key to your mailbox and knew details about your lease agreement. Detective Williams turned to me. Your wife still has access to your mail? Apparently so. I felt stupid for not thinking of that security vulnerability. We'll need to change your locks and mailbox immediately, the building manager said. And we'll review our security procedures to make sure this doesn't happen again. After the police finished their investigation and the building manager arranged for new locks, I called Alara to update her on the situation. She's escalating again, she said. Breaking into your apartment is a serious crime. Will it matter if she's already facing felony charges? It establishes a pattern of increasing violence. That could be important if she tries something worse. What could be worse than this? I don't want to find out. Sunday passed quietly, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every car that lingered too long in the parking lot, every footstep in the hallway, every unexpected sound made me tense. I was becoming paranoid, and I hated it. Monday morning brought the news I had been expecting. Detective Williams called at 8 a.m. to inform me that Zoya had not been at Tamsin's apartment when officers arrived to arrest her. Where is she? We don't know. Tamsin claims she left yesterday afternoon and didn't say where she was going. Do you believe her? Tamsin was nervous and evasive. I think she knows more than she's telling us. What happens now? We issue a warrant for Zoya's arrest and put out a BOLO alert. She can't hide forever. But she could hide long enough to cause more damage. I spent Monday at work trying to focus on routine tasks while constantly checking my phone for updates. Every unknown number made my heart race, and every unexpected visitor to the office made me wonder if Zoya had decided to escalate her campaign to my workplace. At 3 p.m., my fears were realized. Janet Morrison called to inform me that someone had contacted several of our major clients with allegations about my criminal behavior and mental instability. What kind of allegations? I asked, though I already knew the answer. That you've been arrested for harassment, that you're going through a violent divorce, that you might be a security risk. All lies. I know that, and Mr. Rickert knows that. But our clients don't. What do they want? They want assurances that you won't have access to their confidential information while these allegations are investigated. I felt the walls closing in again. Even though the allegations were false, they were creating real consequences for my career and reputation. What do you recommend? Take a leave of absence until this is resolved. We'll pay you, and your job will be waiting when you come back. How long? However long it takes to clear your name completely. I agreed to the leave of absence because I didn't have much choice. Fighting it would only give credence to the allegations about my mental state. But I was furious that Zoya was still able to damage my life even while hiding from felony charges. That evening, I met Alara for what we both knew might be our last strategy session. The legal battles were essentially over, but the personal war was still raging. Darren's disappeared too, she said over dinner. His attorney can't reach him and his apartment is empty. Think they're together? Probably. They're both facing serious consequences, and they both blame us for their problems. What do you think they're planning? I think they're planning one final attempt to destroy us before they disappear completely. What kind of attempt? Alara was quiet for a long moment, staring into her wine glass. Something dramatic, something that will make us look like the villains and them like the victims. Such as? I don't know, but whatever it is, we need to be ready for it. We spent the next hour discussing security measures and contingency plans. We agreed to stay in contact constantly, avoid being alone in isolated locations, and document everything that happened. Most importantly, we agreed not to let them provoke us into doing anything stupid. Tuesday morning brought an unexpected call from Tamsin. Keaton, we need to talk, she said, and her voice sounded different, scared rather than manipulative. About what? About Zoya. She's not thinking clearly anymore. Where is she? I can't tell you that, but I can tell you that she's planning something that's going to hurt everyone involved. What kind of something? She thinks if she can prove that you and Alara are having an affair, it will invalidate your divorce proceedings and make her look like the victim instead of the villain. We're not having an affair. I know that, but Zoya doesn't believe it. She's convinced that you two conspired against her and Darren from the beginning. What is she planning to do? She's going to try to catch you together in a compromising situation, and if she can't find one naturally, she's going to create one. Meaning? Meaning she's going to set up a situation where it looks like you and Alara are having an affair, then document it and present it as evidence. That's insane. That's Zoya. She's obsessed with the idea that she can still win this if she just finds the right angle. Where is she, Tamsin? I can't tell you that, but I can tell you to be very careful. She's not the person you married anymore. After Tamsin hung up, I immediately called Alara to warn her about Zoya's plan. We need to avoid meeting in person until this is over, she said. Agreed. But what if she tries to force a confrontation? Then we make sure it happens in a very public place with lots of witnesses. What if she doesn't give us that choice? Then we call the police and let them handle it. Wednesday passed without incident, but Thursday brought the confrontation I had been dreading. I was leaving my apartment to run errands when I found Zoya waiting by my car in the parking lot. She looked terrible, unwashed hair, wrinkled clothes, and the kind of frantic energy that comes from too much caffeine and too little sleep. But her eyes were sharp and focused, and she was holding something in her right hand. Hello, Keaton, she said calmly. We need to talk. We need to talk through lawyers. You're supposed to be in jail. I'm not going to jail. Not when everyone finds out what you and that woman have been doing. Zoya, you're making this worse for yourself. Turn yourself in and accept responsibility for your actions. My actions? She laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. What about your actions? What about conspiring with Alara to destroy my life? We exposed your affair. That's not the same as destroying your life. You ruined everything. My marriage, my job, my reputation, everything. You ruined those things when you decided to cheat? She raised her right hand, and I saw that she was holding a small digital camera. I'm going to prove that you and Alara have been having an affair. I'm going to show everyone that you're hypocrites. We're not having an affair. Then you won't mind if I follow you around and document your activities. Actually, I do mind. It's called stalking, and it's illegal. What's illegal is conspiracy and fraud. What's illegal is manipulating the legal system to steal someone's husband. I realized that Tamsin had been right. Zoya was no longer thinking clearly. She had constructed an alternate reality where she was the victim and Alara and I were the villains. No amount of evidence or logic was going to change her mind. Zoya, you need help. Professional help. I need justice, and I'm going to get it. She turned and walked toward a car I didn't recognize, probably a rental or borrowed vehicle. As she drove away, she rolled down the window and shouted, "This isn't over!" I immediately called Detective Williams to report the encounter, then called Alara to warn her that Zoya was actively stalking us. She's completely delusional, I told her. She actually believes we're having an affair and that we conspired against her from the beginning. Delusion can be dangerous. Delusional people don't respond to reason or evidence. What do? We end this. Today. How? We give her what she wants, a confrontation, but we do it on our terms, in a place where she can't hurt us or manipulate the situation. Alara's plan was simple but effective. We would meet at the downtown plaza at 6 p.m., a public space with excellent lighting and constant foot traffic. We would invite Zoya to join us for a final conversation, with the understanding that police would be nearby in case things got out of hand. Why would she agree to that? I asked. Because she thinks she's going to expose our affair. She thinks she's finally going to prove that she's the victim. And what are we actually going to do? We're going to let her expose herself. At 5:45 p.m., I was sitting on a bench in the downtown plaza when Alara arrived. She looked calm and professional, carrying a briefcase and wearing the kind of outfit she might wear to a business meeting. "Ready for this?" she asked. "As ready as I'll ever be." At exactly 6 p.m., Zoya appeared at the edge of the plaza. She was carrying her camera and walking with the determined stride of someone on a mission. She approached our bench directly, no longer trying to hide or be subtle. Well, she said when she reached us. The conspirators finally meet in public. "Hello, Zoya," Alara said calmly. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for finally admitting what you've been doing." "What exactly do you think we've been doing?" Zoya raised her camera and started taking pictures. "Having an affair, conspiring against Darren and me, manipulating the legal system." "We've been coordinating our divorce proceedings," I said. "That's not illegal or immoral. You've been meeting secretly, sharing information, plotting our destruction." Alara opened her briefcase and withdrew a thick folder. "Actually, we've been documenting everything. Every meeting, every conversation, every piece of evidence we've gathered. Proof of your conspiracy. Proof of our transparency." Alara handed Zoya a copy of the folder. "Every interaction we've had is documented here. Dates, times, locations, witnesses. Nothing secret, nothing inappropriate." Zoya flipped through the folder with growing agitation. "This proves nothing. It proves we've been conducting ourselves legally and ethically while you and Darren have been lying, cheating, and breaking the law. I'm not the one who destroyed 2 marriages. No, I said quietly. You're the one who destroyed one marriage by having an affair. Darren destroyed the other one the same way. We were in love. You were having an affair with a married man who was lying to both of us. Zoya's composure finally cracked. You don't understand. Darren and I had something real, something special. You and Ilara were just obstacles. We were your spouses, Ilara said. We deserved honesty and respect. You deserved what you got. The conversation was attracting attention from other people in the plaza. Several passers-by had stopped to watch, and I could see someone recording the encounter with their phone. Zoya, I said gently, this is over. The divorces are final, the legal proceedings are complete, and you're facing criminal charges. It's time to accept responsibility and move on. It's not over until I prove what you did. What exactly do you think we did? You conspired against us. You manipulated the system. You're having an affair. We're 2 people who were betrayed by our spouses and decided to handle our divorces intelligently rather than emotionally. That's not what happened. Ilara stood up from the bench. Zoya, I'm going to say this once, and I want you to listen carefully. Your marriage to Keaton ended when you decided to have an affair. My marriage to Darren ended when he made the same decision. Keaton and I didn't destroy your relationships. We simply refused to pretend they hadn't already been destroyed. You're lying. We're done. Ilara closed her briefcase and looked directly into Zoya's camera. If you continue to harass us, we'll file restraining orders. If you continue to stalk us, we'll have you arrested. If you continue to make false accusations, we'll sue you for defamation. You can't threaten me! We're not threatening you, I said, standing up beside Ilara. We're informing you of the consequences of your actions. Zoya looked around the plaza, suddenly aware that dozens of people were watching her public meltdown. Her face flushed with embarrassment and rage. This isn't over, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Yes, Ilara said calmly. It is. We walked away together, leaving Zoya standing alone in the plaza with her camera and her delusions. Behind us, I could hear her shouting something about justice and conspiracy, but her words were lost in the noise of the city. Think that's the end of it? I asked as we reached our cars. I think that's the end of her believing she can win, Ilara replied. She just humiliated herself in front of dozens of witnesses. Even she has to realize it's over now. The next morning brought confirmation that Ilara was right. Detective Williams called to inform me that Zoya had turned herself in during the night. She wants to make a deal, he said. Plead guilty to the false police reports in exchange for a reduced sentence. What kind of sentence? Probably probation and community service, assuming she gets psychological counseling. And Darren? Still missing. But his law firm has filed a complaint with the State Bar Association, and his assets are being frozen pending the outcome of Ilara's divorce settlement. 3 weeks later, I was back at work and trying to rebuild my routine when I received a final piece of mail from Zoya. It was a brief note, handwritten on plain paper. Keaton, I know you won't forgive me, and I don't expect you to. I want you to know that I'm getting help and trying to understand how I became someone I don't recognize. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you find happiness. Z. I read the note twice, then put it in my desk drawer. It wasn't an admission of guilt or a request for reconciliation. It was simply an acknowledgement that our story was finally over. That evening, I called Ilara to tell her about the note. How do you feel? She asked. Relieved and a little sad. Sad? Sad that it took all this drama for her to finally be honest about something. Do you think she means it? I think she means it right now. Whether she'll mean it next month or next year is a different question. What about you? What happens next? I looked around my quiet apartment, thinking about the question. I think I'm going to take a vacation, somewhere warm and peaceful where nobody knows my name or my story. That sounds perfect. What about you? I'm thinking about expanding my business, maybe opening a second office in another city. A fresh start. A better start. We talked for a few more minutes about practical matters and future plans. When we hung up, I realized that this was probably the last conversation we would have for a while. Our alliance had been born out of necessity and mutual benefit, but it had served its purpose. We were both free to move on with our lives. I poured myself a drink and sat on my balcony, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. 6 weeks ago, I had been a naive husband who trusted his wife and believed in the fundamental fairness of the world. Now I was a man who understood that sometimes the only way to get justice is to fight for it yourself. I had learned to document everything, anticipate attacks, and respond to threats with strategic thinking rather than emotional reaction. I had learned that desperate people make desperate choices, and that the best defense against manipulation is preparation and evidence. Most importantly, I had learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be a victim. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. For a moment, my heart raced as I wondered if Zoya was starting a new campaign of harassment. Then, I read the message and smiled. Saw the news about your wife's arrest. If you ever want to grab a beer and swap divorce horror stories, let me know. Jake from accounting. I typed back, I'll take you up on that. It was time to start building a new life, one based on honesty rather than deception, trust rather than suspicion, and genuine connections rather than convenient lies. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be real. And after everything I had been through, real was enough.